down with the proper perspective.
The proper perspective.
Much absolute light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz break it down with the proper perspective. Shabazz break it down with the proper perspective. Break it down with the proper perspective.
What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing tonight? What's going on? How y'all doing? This is Shabazz with the proper perspective, coming to you live up here on YouTube. I'm a little bit tired, so I'm gonna try not to be up on here that long. But what's going on? How y'all doing tonight? Trying to make sure we get this thing situated. Did y'all hear me? I'm gonna wait a couple minutes to see if anybody is gonna stop by. Let me pull this. Let me pull this link. And let me turn off my phone. Like I said, every time I go live, I start getting phone calls. So let me see now. What's going on? How y'all doing? Yes, I am live. Yes, I am live. There we go. Let's get them likes up and answer the question I got in the chat room. So as we get ready to get this thing rolling tonight, what we're doing is what they call a response video. But let me see. How we gonna get this thing rolling tonight is this way. Now I just left another lively conversation about almost the same thing. So we're gonna see what's popping. Yeah, we're talking about the FBA folks again tonight. But not in necessarily a derogatory manner. I'm going to try to keep this thing respectful. Now, I did a video. I did a video a couple of days ago, and I had a couple of brothers respond with some thoughtful questions. And so I decided, let me mull it over. And so I was just gonna like drop some notes onto the comment page, but I figured, nah, these ideas, this conversation deserves a little bit more of more text, more talking, more conversation than just some quick words typed out on the keyboard. So as we get started tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to open up like I have started doing. So let me get my, okay, now I got all my equipment ready to rock and roll. Grand rising, everybody. How y'all doing tonight? This is Professor Shabazz in the building. Yeah, that's right. I'm one of them kind of brothers. I said grand rising. But let me say peace to all the positive people in the universe. What's good, Richmond, Virginia, and hotep to the Pan-African black world. And all the real ones who see through the smoke and mirrors. Now, before we get started, like, share, and subscribe, because that's the name of the game, and that's the claim to YouTube fame. So please, like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Say something in the comments if you are here. But with that as my intro, and I'm finished. All right, y'all. Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get into it. Because it was a brother named, hold up. Well, it was an FBA personality named Ricardo Float 2787. That's the individual's name. He dropped a comment saying, FBA isn't a group. Now, I beg to differ. I will at least say, now we all know it started off as a group, but I have noticed some morphing. I have noticed some Decepticon transformations as this campaign, as this group, as this COINTELPRO style, divide and conquer style thing has grown. It's this modern aged Borg machine has kept chewing down the train. They have been trying to reformulate themselves, but it started off as a group. And the way in which some of their strongest and most staunch advocates behave, it begins to feel like what he says it isn't. Now, he said it's not a cult. He said, we're not connected to COINTELPRO. He said, in my video, or not necessarily in my video alone, but in my video and in my responses to him, I never explain what makes their behavior unacceptable. Unacceptable as he frames it in terms of behavior patterns, because that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about behaviors. I'm talking about patterns of behavior. I'm not identifying necessarily anyone individually, but, now today I'm going to do my best again. I'm going to set the record straight. And so what I'm going to do, if I can, y'all know sometimes technology is not our friend. But I'm going to see if I can get this thing rolling again. And what I'm going to do, just so that we are all clear, because I want you to know, I want you to see his comment. Now, I was going to try to pull it up on my video page, but I couldn't get to that. So, let me move this over a little bit. Is the mic too hot? Y'all can say something in the comments if you're here. If I can get his comment on the screen, because I don't want to misquote the brother. I don't want to misquote him. Because it's going to be, I guess, to some extent, it probably will be a bit cantankerous. So as we try to, there we go. We're going to get this comment on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to get this comment on the screen for you. Now, whether or not it can be seen visually appropriately, that will be another conversation. Now, let me see. So we're getting this thing up here on the screen. Can y'all see that? Is that big enough? Is that clear enough? It looks like it's visible to me now. So, again, I don't want to misquote the brother. So I'm putting his comment on the screen so you can see it. At the very least, we can't have this brother saying, there you go again. You ain't talking about, you misquoting me. No, I'm not going to misquote you. So I got this thing up here on the big screen so everybody can really see what's going on right now. So as I said, he asked me at the proper perspective. FBA isn't a group, a cult of any kind, nor is it connected with any COINTELPRO government program either. And you know this. Now, let me pause for a second. I don't know this. He says, I never heard you say what makes them so despicable, unacceptable, or of any ill conduct. Unless these are now the same for delineation, which seems to be driving the diaspora out of what small minds they started with. So again, y'all see the comment right there on the page. So you see what he said. Now, nobody can say I'm misquoting him. I'm going to try to leave it up on the screen as we get into this tonight. First thing I want to do is I want to clarify my position. So just let me be very clear. I do call certain FBA behavior cult-like. I stand on that. Now, maybe some of this is lost in translation, but I do call it COINTELPRO. And I mean it. Disclaimer for the hard of hearing. No disclaimer for the new. If you haven't been to my channel, if you haven't seen my videos or my lives, let me just say it this way. Now, legally, no one can prove that an operative exists today because we all recognize that the program has officially been shut down. So I'm not saying that in a legal sense. We all know, however, we all know, or at least we should know, that in practical terms, most people in the black community who've been paying attention knows that there are tactics that we learned and we saw during the COINTELPRO era. We learned and we saw coming about of certain J. Edgar Hoover files. And we learned to pay attention to them. In fact, anyone in the black community who's been paying attention knows there has always been. And unfortunately, I have to admit, there most likely always will be operative-like people, agent-like people. Now, sometimes we call them, we got our own little funny words, we got our own little slang, we got our own little linguistics that we employ. Sometimes we call them sellouts. Sometimes like Willie D does, sometimes we call them coons. I wish that brother would make an updated version of that song. I think he got 2 versions out there, or 2 editions, I should say. Sometimes we use other elements of our ebonics, and we call them Uncle Toms. And let me pause for a minute. Yeah, I know that's the wrong word based on a careful reading of the novel from whence it comes. But that's for another day, because we still use the word. We still use that, even though a lot of us have been schooled to know we shouldn't be calling the sellout an Uncle Tom. Perhaps we should be calling him a Sambo. But we're still going to use that term regardless. So that's for another day. Sometimes we call him Stephen from Django. You know, house-minded folk. The ones that's real comfy and cozy with massa. But I digress. Let me get back to defining what I mean when I say a lot of these FBA folk are COINTELPRO type people, or their behaviors seem to match and mimic. And y'all know, if it walk like a duck, if it quack like a duck. But again, let me back down a little bit. Because, you know, it's like, I'll say it this way. It's like the Cold War. Now, what do I mean by that? Back in the 80s, when the U.S. was battling Russia, treaties were signed, and on paper there were these ideals about de-escalation. I'm not going to build any more nuclear bombs if you don't build any more nuclear bombs. So on paper, the problem was solved. But behind scenes, And some people knew it at the time, some people didn't. A lot of people, especially if they didn't know it, later down the road, they found out, oh, the actions continued. So both sides continued escalating. Both sides continued building up their nuclear arsenal. But they signed treaties to put an end to the arsenal add-on policies. That's what I mean. That's what I'm pointing out. So when I say COINTELPRO, what do we mean? We mean manipulation. We mean deception. We mean masterfully controlling or trying to control narratives that do harm. So yes, we know that COINTELPRO is a defunct program on paper. So if y'all feel me, say something in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. Because I think we at least got that part out the way. Now we got that straight. I hope we're on the same page now. So now I'm going to address the brother Ricardo's comment. Or I'm going to start picking apart the comment. He said, I never explained why FBA is despicable or of ill conduct. Again, let me stress, I'm not calling out individual names necessarily. Now, I could call out the leader, but the leader has said, don't call me no leader. And like good cult members, they stopped calling him the leader. So I want to point out and I want to focus on patterns of behavior. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean, Professor Shabazz? Twisting conversations, controlling narratives, punishing dissent. That's cult-like behavior. That's COINTELPRO energy. And it's very observable. Whether you spend your time on YouTube, you spend your time on Instagram, you spend your time on TikTok, you've seen this cult-like behavior. Cults tend to gather in unified, tight, lock, stock, and barrel. There can be no dissent. They create their own words. Tether, for instance. But let me say this. In one interpretive analysis, I'm not necessarily bombing hard on the new title or the new label, the three characters, or the three letters, the F, the B, and the A, although I don't necessarily subscribe to them, I don't identify with them, I wouldn't necessarily use them. Only in a very limited, very specific conversation might I acquiesce and use it. In general, I'm completely against it. But this isn't necessarily about the label. And when I say things like acting like a cult, acting COINTELPRO, being COINTELPRO, I'm not talking about the label. I'm talking about the actions. I'm talking about the words. I'm talking about the verbiage. I'm talking about the toxicity that guides their behaviors. Now, perhaps let me give you this more of a concrete example. For example, I make a video. I have conversations and discussions. And what happens is they begin to soundbite themselves to death. They twist the clips. They cut off pieces to get rid of nuance so that they can push a certain energy, an idea. Now, when you have the result of these tricks, that alone shows there's a problem. So when clips get twisted to make it look like I said something that I didn't, I begin to notice, I begin to observe, I begin to understand this is what COINTELPRO type folk do. Like, I have a video and you come to the comment page And it's so plainly obvious that you did not listen to the video. You got mad at the title, and then you get the texting, and and your whole response twists everything because you're responding to the title. So you'll take the word mask and then just start running with it. This is exactly the behavior that I'm calling out. It's manipulation. It's narrative control. Or again, it's the attempt to control the narrative. It's classic COINTELPRO energy. And you know what? It reminds me of the way, now I shouldn't say the guy's name, but y'all know the most recent martyr from Utah. Not from Utah, but the martyred individual who was martyred in Utah. Y'all know who I'm talking about. Now, everybody like to say he was a Greek debater. He was not. But the way these FBA folk that I encounter, the way they approach all of their conversations with me, it reminds me of the way that guy used to debate. What do you mean? Totally without integrity. That's what I mean. Well, I liked his debates. I thought he was a good debater. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news to you. Cult members usually think that of their fellow cult members. But I'm here to tell you, CK's debates were all about spin, and that's what they're trying to do. CK's debates were all about talking past the other person. The integrity of the discussion disappears. That's the parallel I see here when I encounter these staunch advocates of the FBA-ism. I see a willfulness in twisting the meaning of the clips. I see a willfulness in twisting the meaning of the commentary. I see an intentional misrepresentation of the words and the ideas. And if you can even call it a debate, if you can even call it a discussion, the exchange becomes more about winning instead of truth. And it's one of the reasons every time you get into a conversation with them, what do they say? Well, I'll beat you in a debate. I bet you I'll beat you in a debate. Because they're not even interested in having a fair exchange of ideas. They just got a whole lot of gotcha talking points. And that's what I mean. So let me move on. Because here's something else worth noting. For the brother Ricardo, this is exactly what the alt-right does all the time. I find it interesting that FBA folks, now, okay, I'm a step away from my professionalism, and I can't help but take a little jab every now and then. So the FBA folks, you know, the citizens of Delululand, I see them mimicking alt-right tactics. And I think that's a problem. And I think that's part of where I end up saying, okay, well, if you talk like a white supremacist and you act like a white supremacist, just because you got melanin don't mean you're not a white supremacist. They're taking the same ultra-conservative, right-wing, racist strategies, and the only thing different is they're pointing them all inward at our own black community. That's the pattern that I see. And that's what I hope any of the folk who join me, any of the folk who watch my videos, any of the folk who make comments on my videos, I hope that's what you see. I hope you see it plainly for what it is. So let's make sure, because I want this to be very clear. Here's what I said in my original transcript, and you can go back and watch it and listen to it. I said, By reason of mathematics, there has to be some level-headed people in the zeitgeist of this FBA atmosphere, of this FBA arena. I said, there's gotta be. So I'm not trying to disparage any and every person. I'm talking about the ones who act like they have to be the soldiers, and they carry all of the exact same talking points. Now, as much as I want to say I believe there are some reasonable ones out there, I can't help the fact that I keep running into the Delulus. And with lines like, small minds of the diasporans, that's exactly the kind of name calling and belittling that I'm talking about. I'm like, okay, thank you for the cult-like behavior. You proved my point. And a lot of times it's not even discussed. It's not even disguised. It's like, it's right. They're frothing. They're foaming at the mouth with it. It's just bold face. It's shameful. It's despicable. Since that's the word you use, brother. Or maybe it was the word that I used and you said I hadn't told you, I hadn't broken down what's so despicable. Well, it's despicable to say people got small minds because they don't believe in the cult-like movement. I'd say it's unacceptable. So, I'll also say this. These behaviors that I see, these behaviors that I point out, this ideology that I'm talking against, and the way in which these soldiers carry themselves, they carry themselves in poor taste at best. And again, at worst, it's just cult behavior. Pointing fingers instead of addressing behavior is the same pattern that I highlighted earlier. In the clip, I said, for all of the hardcore, staunch advocates that I encounter, their behavior matches a cult. Their behavior matches COINTELPRO. And what do you know? Enter Ricardo. You know, there's a reason they say a hit dog always hollers. Y'all catching me? You feel me? But that's the heart of it. I'm clearly not trying to talk about everyone. I'm talking about the patterns of behavior. And yes, Ricardo Flaut 2787, that includes those who twist words, because that's despicable. Those who spin narratives and old talking points, because that's despicable. And those who create drama to attack others in the community, because that's despicable. The same tactics that the alt-right uses, but directed internally, which is despicable. Let it be clear. You got it? Do we understand? Those patterns that I've been talking about, twisting clips, belittling critics, controlling the narrative, or attempts to control the narrative. Because again, we ain't gonna let that happen, at least not over here in my little teeny tiny small neck of the woods. But maybe that's why they are so angry. Because we will not give up the space. We will not let FBA be the sole representative. We will not let FBA be the loudest representative. We will not let FBA be the primary representative of African Americans. Not within the contiguous 48. Not outside of the contiguous 48. Not on the African continent. Not in South America. Not in Central America. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that y'all don't have a right to exist. You have a right to exist. You have a right to name yourselves. Kujichagulia always, the principle of the Nguzo Saba, Kujichagulia says we all have a right to name ourselves how we see fit. So I'm not mad at you for that. I'm not against you for that. I would even salute you for that. If your FBA-ism wasn't always lock, stock, and barrel attached to hateful divide and conquer speech, tactics, strategies, and talking points. Because none of that is what we need. Us African Americans, those of us who are proud of our African descent, us Africans in the West, those of us who are proud of our African descent, we don't run from the continent. We don't run from our Africanity. Now, we also don't deny that we were born in the West. We also don't deny that it is Uncle Sam that gives us our passports and our driver's licenses. We don't deny that it is Uncle Sam to whom we pay taxes. But that's a far cry from wrapping ourselves into the red, white, and blue, that smallpox-infected, blood-drenched fabric. So, okay, let me stop editorializing. Here's what I want you to take away. Observe behavior, not labels. Again, I might would defend the label. So this is not about the label. Observe the behavior. Look for control. Look for manipulation. Look for narrative twisting. Those are the things that define the energy I'm talking about. FBA itself may be a name. And if you want to call yourself FBA, go for it. I'm not mad at you. I'm not against you calling yourself FBA. Oh, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I forgot. In the morphology of the mythology, it is now becoming passé to call them FBA. They're no longer FBA, ladies and gentlemen. They're the lineage. As a matter of fact, they've changed the label now from a name to a lineage. And I swear there's something else that I saw. It's about to be transformed again. But they've literally gone from a name now to now it's a lineage, and now it's neither this and now it's neither that. And ladies and gentlemen, the movement ever so shifts like a chameleon, like a transformer, like a Decepticon. But none of that really honestly matters. Again, Kujichagulia, you can change your name. Hell, we can't. We started as the colored. We went to the Negro. We went to the black. We went to the Afro-American. We went to the Black American. We went to the African American. Names change per generation. There's not necessarily a problem with that. Again, I'm not calling out the label. I'm calling out the actions. For our sojourn here on this stolen land, with every name that we have either chosen or claimed of our own accord, we've always behaved in a way that suggests we recognize our connection to that continent. Even as colored, we still recognized that that continent was full of coloreds just like us. Even when we called or when we called ourselves Negro, we still recognize it's just a Spanish word for black. When we moved into Afro-American, we did that not because we were growing hairstyles that were big and lofty and beautiful, by the way, but because we were trying to connect ourselves to that continent. And yeah, I know, here comes the old talking point. Jesse Jackson gave us that name. No, he did not. The name was already running through the black community for 100+ years. Jesse Jackson just happened to have the microphone at the right time. You know that. You right place, right time. And everybody took to it because right place, right time. But it was already floating in the community. And they got it already documented. So again, I'm saying all this to say, this is not about the label. This is about the behavior. This is about the actions. This is about the hate-filled speeches and rhetoric that come with the label. That's what I'm calling out. The way conversations and communities are attacked and belittled. So, my brother Ricardo, my FBA brother Ricardo, I thank you for your comment. I thank you for the engagement. But I want to be accurate. This is about patterns more than it is about a personal attack. Now, yes, I took a couple of jabs. Those jabs were not directed at Ricardo. So anyone listening, whether you be Ricardo yourself or you feel yourself, you find yourself aligned with the FBA movement, I took a couple of jabs for fun because it's YouTube and we got to keep it light. But I do still really do believe that if you're leaning that hardcore and that heavily into the FBA-ism, I do really believe there is something delusional in this. But I'm not trying to have this whole conversation be boiled down to a personal attack. What I'm trying to have a conversation about is the cult-like behavior, the COINTELPRO tactics. Now, I hope I've been clear about it. I hope I've explained it in a way where you get it. I hate to be the one to let you in on the secret around here. But when it comes to cult-like behavior and COINTELPRO tactics, the comment that you made on my page, Ricardo, is a clear demonstration of what I was talking about. And mimicking oppressive strategies. Those are what I'm highlighting. If we focus on behavior instead of names, we can have a real conversation and protect the whole black community from manipulation. To do otherwise, to do as you have done, to do as many of these staunch FBA soldiers do when they come into comment spaces, is despicable. If you're not trying to protect the whole group, if you're trying to do harm to members of the group, that is unacceptable. That is ill conduct. Now, let me say this, because as I said, I was in another space earlier. Here's something that was posed to me. So let's think about it. What's more important, the label that the people give themselves or the energy they bring? Now, again, I stand hard on Kujichagulia. Call yourself what you want to. I call myself an African in the West. I don't need anybody's permission. I don't need a continental African to validate that. I don't need another African American to validate that. I don't need an FBA to validate that. Just the same as there is no one who proclaims themselves as an FBA that needs me or anybody else to validate them. You are who you say you are. But, however, when the label especially a new one that comes upon the scene, when it begins to match negative energy. When negative energy seems to always come attached to the label, I think that is a very revealing scenario. So just like the alt-right, no white nationalists and no white Christian nationalists, and they swear up and down, I'm not racist, and everything that come out their mouth is racism. So no, I can't say that the label doesn't matter. I can't say one is better than the other, or rather, I can't say that the new label is better than the previous one. No, not at all. Not ever. The new label, however, detaches us from our African lineage, and that I got a problem with. Because I think that was very intentional. And I have heard some staunch alt-right people several years ago, when the movement was just getting started, weighing in on this label. And that is very revealing. So this new label, the very fact that this new label detaches us from our lineage, yeah, I'm going to use the word, our African lineage. It detaches us from our African heritage. And this is all done so deliberately. So that we are, in effect, in a sense, mentally stuck, spiritually and geographically and geopolitically stuck inside the loving arms of Uncle Sam's contiguous 48? Oh, no. I, for one, as a Pan-Africanist, I, for one, as an African in the West, as an African-American, whose past 400 years of his family tree are squarely rooted in the stolen land, I refuse to claim myself, proclaim myself, talk about myself as if I'm some kind of Frankenstein creation. Because that is what foundational Black American, the label, actually signals. It means you are a monster. And that is how they behave. That is how some of them behave. That is how the most staunch, ferocious, fierce, poison-talking advocates that I encounter behave. Y'all feel me? Y'all hear me? Now, feel free to keep duking it out in the battlefield. Y'all know that's my comment section, right? All you valiant warriors, whether you be on the Pan-African side, the FBA side, whether you be the Pretendian, whether you be, who else is there? FBA, ADOS, Pretendian, Aboriginals, Peru, Black Cherokees. The list just goes on and on. All of these new labels and new invented mythologies. But hey, if you want to tell me how messed up I am, if you want to tell me how wrong I am, let's talk about it in the comment section. So like I say, ladies and gentlemen, this your brother Shabazz. Grand rising to peace to Richmond, Virginia. Peace to the Pan-African Black world. And I will see y'all on the next one. Like, share, and subscribe. Let me not forget to say that. Like, share, and subscribe. And I'll holler at you later. Peace.
Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective.
The proper perspective.
So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz break it down with the proper perspective.